All right, hello Chase Oaks. Good to see everybody. Want to welcome everybody, of course, at Legacy, as well as our people in my neighborhood, our Woodbridge campus, our Sloan Creek campus, our Richardson campus in Espanol. People are online right now, kind of everywhere, so welcome. And before I jump into the message, Friday night I didn't speak. That's not normal around here. We usually Friday and Sunday are exactly the same. Peter Park was nice enough to speak for me. And the reason I was missing is we had an extended family funeral at Arlington Cemetery on Friday afternoon. And man, what a moving experience. And we're talking in this series, Love Does the Unexpected, about how really love is about sacrifice and choosing to live that way and to be there and to experience full military funeral and 400,000 headstones of people who gave their life for us. Certainly makes me appreciative for all of you who are veterans, all of you who've lost loved ones, who are part of our church. Can we just thank those folks? So we are talking, and Love Does the Unexpected. We're doing this series designed not just to be a series, but really to launch a season, and not just a season, but our prayer is, it takes the Holy Spirit to do this, but to launch a movement of unexpected love in our community and in our church. And we've had a great start. I mean, think about it. It started with Bob Goff, if you were here for that. Man, how awesome is that? Like, he's a force of nature, that guy, And he's off doing all these crazy things and all these stories. And if you didn't get to see him, you can read Love Does or Everybody Always. It's just so inspiring, right? And then so the next week of this series, well, how do you one-up Bob Goff? How do you do better than that? And we did. You know why? Because we went all the way to Jesus. That's how you do it. That trumps everything. So we went all the way to Jesus. And we talked about Jesus, how at Easter last week, how he was so amazing and astonishing. That was the word the crowds always used of him, in large part because of his unexpected love that he displayed. And it was shocking to the religious people, but amazing to the crowds and to the people who were served. So we talked about Jesus, and then and that's pretty cool, right? I mean, Jesus is, it's hard to get better than that. And then we also talked about the early church, his early followers, and how they grabbed hold of what he told them to do, which is, hey, if you're going to be my followers, you've seen me love for these years. That's exactly how I'm asking you to live. You are going to reach this world if you love people the way that you saw me love people. And that started this movement 2,000 years ago of unexpected love that won over a very skeptical world. And so and now that brings us to today. And all that's really great, but it can also be a little intimidating because there's only one Bob Goff. Most of us aren't going to be Bob Goff. I mean, he's inspiring and everything, but, we're probably not the same kind of force of nature like him. None of us are Jesus, right? And even the early church, it just seems so big and so crazy what they did, and it's like, wow. And it can feel a little intimidating, and especially, our lives are overwhelming without worrying about love does the unexpected, right? We've got jobs, or we want one. We've got spouses, or maybe you want one, maybe you don't, I don't know. A lot of people have kids, you're trying to raise, you have mortgages you're trying to pay. Life's pretty full without worrying about any of this. And so life can be overwhelming. The whole thing can be a little intimidating. And so today what we want to do is just bring it down and say, actually, it's pretty simple. It doesn't mean it's easy, but it is simple. Today we're going to talk about what it means to love like Jesus loved and to be part of his movement called Christianity, which is his movement of unexpected love on this planet. And we're going to hear from Jesus himself talk about it. And again, he's just going to bring it down. And not only can we do this, he's available to inspire and equip us to do this, to empower us to do this, and he invites us to do this. And so today he's going to just bring it down. And the story that we're going to look at is one that if you grew up in church, you know this story. If you've been at Chase Oaks for some time, you probably know this story. If you haven't, it'll be brand new, which is awesome because it's a great story. But I want all of us to listen as if it's for the first time. Today, we're talking about the story of the Good Samaritan that will help us understand what Love Does the Unexpected is all about and what it means to live a Jesus kind of way in this planet. So the story of the Good Samaritan has a context. The context is this religious guy. Do you know any religious people? He was like a Bible scholar. He was a theologian. So he knew the Bible inside and out. So he's interacting with Jesus, who's a trained rabbi, he's God, but this guy didn't know that yet. So he's interacting with Jesus, and he asks Jesus, kind of for him, a philosophical question, a big question. What must a person do to inherit eternal life? That was the question. It's another way of saying, what is the essence of real spirituality, of true spirituality? If you're going to boil it all down, there's all these laws and stuff in the Old Testament, all these teachings. If you're going to boil it down, how would you boil it down? Jesus looks at him and says, well, you're the theologian. You're the expert. So why don't you tell me? And the guy's he's not bummed by that. I think he's ready for that because he's got a good answer. And he did have a good answer. So he says, quotes two very key, iconic Old Testament passages. Well, first, you love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And second command is just as important, and that is to love your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus is like, bingo, that's awesome. There's not a better answer. You got an A+, awesome answer. Now, actually go and live that way, and then you got something going. Now, that was a little challenge. That was like a gauntlet thrown down. Because, he knew the right thing to do, but he wasn't actually doing it. So Jesus says, hey, it's cool to know what to do. Why don't you actually do it? And then that's going to be pretty awesome. So the guy's wanting to kind of deflect. Well, then that's what Luke tells us in Luke 10:29. But he, the religious guy, theologian, wanted to justify himself. He wanted to get the heat off of himself. So he asked Jesus, who is my neighbor? And what he's saying there is, who is my neighbor really? I mean, that sounds good, love your neighbor as yourself. But who is my neighbor? How do you know who to love really? Because you can't just love everybody, right? You can't do everything. And some people, are they even worthy of love and deserving of, right? And so who is my neighbor? So confusing. And Jesus tells this story because it's not confusing. He's going to make it really simple. Doesn't mean it's easy, but it is simple. And so the story he tells is the story of the Good Samaritan, to answer the question. A man was going down the road from Jerusalem to Jericho. When he fell into the hands of robbers, they stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. Now, the road from Jerusalem to Jericho, even today, is just this winding road through these kind of foothill kind of mountains that go up to Jerusalem. And so he was going down, but it was a very treacherous road in Jesus' day. It was narrow, had all these winding things, like a winding road through the mountains. Lots of places for thieves and bad people to hang out and hide behind these rocks and come out, just like in the old Western movies, when they're going through the canyons and they're looking around, And that's the way it was, except this time it happens. He gets mugged by these robbers, stripped of his clothes, left for dead there on the side of the road. So that's the story, or the context. And then a priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side of the road, passes by him. Now, the crowd at that point, when they heard the word priest, they'd be like, yeah, okay. And then it's like, because he doesn't do the right thing. They would expect the priest to do the right thing. They would have expected the priest to, do something good to help this guy, but we don't know the motives. Jesus doesn't say of the priest. He just keeps walking on by. And then the next person. So too, a Levite. Now, Levites, everybody liked Levites. Levites were not as uppity as priests. They weren't as powerful. They weren't as wealthy. They were the kind of the servants in the temple. I mean, Levites were kind of like puppies. You gotta love them. You can't help but love a puppy. You can't help but love a Levite. So when they heard Levite, they've been like, oh, well, good. I mean, now, yeah. I mean, the puppy's always gonna do the right? Levite's gonna do the right thing, but again, same thing. A Levite, when he saw him, passed by on the other side. And the crowd would have gone, ah. But then they're also getting it, that there's somebody else that's coming. This was a typical way to tell stories in Jesus' day, a story of three, where you have two people, A, B, C. So A and B kind of set the pattern, and then C breaks the pattern. We have that too in our jokes, like a blonde, a brunette, and a redhead go into a bar, right? Or a priest, a rabbi, and a minister, whatever. Do you want me to tell one? Okay, I'm not sure it's appropriate for church, so don't tell anybody are you okay? It's kind of, anyway, it's the only one I know. It's the only one I could think of, and I don't know why it came to mind, but I wasn't gonna do it, and I'm gonna get in trouble for doing it, but why not? Life's short. So here it is. So 3 pastors and their wives, right, are driving to this pastor's conference, and they have a wreck, and they all die. So they all are up in heaven, at the gates of heaven. St. Peter is there. This is bad theology. This is not how heaven works. And the way you get to heaven is through faith in Jesus and his finished work on the cross, not our works. Everybody understand that? Okay. So anyway, St. Peter says, bad theology, but St. Peter says, the first pastor comes up and the guy, oh man, I'm a pastor. This is my wife. I can't wait to, hey, you just hold up there, hotshot. I'm not going to let you in. You did a lot of good things as a pastor, but you loved money so much that you married a girl named Penny. And he's like, you can't come in. So the next one says, well, he gets up there, he says, yeah, you did a lot of great things too, but I'm not letting you in either. You love drinking so much, you married a girl named Sherry. And so the third pastor looks at his wife and says, come on, Fanny, let's just leave, because they're... You can tell me if I should repeat that later in the next service. Anyway, so a story of 3. All right. So they would have been expecting the next person to break the pattern. But it's really surprising because they know, okay, this guy's going to do the right thing. But a Samaritan. And the crowd would have been like, it would have been a shocker. It'd be like, parents would be, putting their ears over their kids like some of you did when I said it's not appropriate. And they would have been gone like, that's terrible. It's the disciples would have been going like, he was doing so good. Now this. Because they know that the third person is probably going to be the one who does the right thing. And sure enough, it is. And he doesn't just do the right thing. He really does the right thing. A Samaritan, as he traveled, came down where the man was. And when he saw him, he took pity on him. And he went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring oil and wine, oil to soothe, wine to disinfect. And then he put the man on his own donkey, took him to an inn, took care of him. The next day he took out 2 silver coins and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have. So he goes over the top. Now that would have been unexpected because we call the story of the Good Samaritan. In Jesus' day, for the Jewish people he was talking to, there was no such thing as a good Samaritan. It's like an Aggie saying a good Longhorn, or a good Longhorn saying a good Aggie, right? You just couldn't come out of your mouth that way. Be like, yeah, you can't do it. But it was way deeper in that culture. There'd been a lot of violence, a lot of blood spilled over this. This wasn't just a little, feud. This was deep. And they hated each other. And so that concept of a good Samaritan was impossible to think about. So they would have expected when the Samaritan comes in the story, that if he's going to break the pattern, he's just not going to walk by. He's going to do a pile driver, boom, and finish the guy off. But they don't expect him to do that. But the Samaritan becomes the hero in the story. And then Jesus looks at the religious guy, and he says, which one of the 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? Is that a complicated question? No, the answer is really obvious. The expert in the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. And Jesus told him, well, then go and do that. Go and do likewise. You see what I mean? To live like Jesus, the essence of real spirituality from God's perspective, it's not complicated. Doesn't mean it's easy, because it demands sacrifice. But it's not complicated. We can make it so complicated to try to justify ourselves. Well, you can't do everything. You can't, people, they mess up their lives. They got to, all that. We can make it really complicated, but Jesus didn't do that. He just said, you love like the Samaritan loved. You live like that. You go through life with your eyes open and your heart ready to be broken and your hands and feet ready to be Jesus, that's what you do. Now, if you and I love like Jesus, we're going to see it is unexpected. And it is, and let me just prepare all of us, okay? Just like it was for Jesus' original followers, it's going to make us uncomfortable. And like Jesus, it's going to be controversial. And some people are going to misunderstand it, and religious people aren't going to like it. And that's just that's if we love the way Jesus loves. But that's how we roll, because we're Jesus people in this church. He's the Lord of the church. It's his church, not your church, not my church. It's his church. And he's asked us to follow him. So what does it look like to be that kind of church, to be that kind of person? And what I want to do is I want to think back through the story and talk about, because there's a lot of things unexpected. What does it mean to live the unexpected? What does it mean to do the unexpected? And it'll help us even understand in this little series, in these little few weeks, and beyond that, what it means, what love does the unexpected is all about. So here's some of the unexpected things in this story that we can learn from. The first is unexpected source. A Samaritan was like the last person that anybody would expect to do good in the people that Jesus was talking to, like we said. They would have expected him to do something bad, not something good. They had very low expectations of a Samaritan. They expected bad things, not good things. Okay, here's our deal today, 2,000 years later. As Christians, as the church, in a post-Christian world, you and I now are like the Samaritan in people's mind. People don't expect anything good from us. What they expect is actually bad from us. That's the deal. We don't have to guess that. All you have to do is look at surveys from people like Gallup and the Pew Organization and all that, and the words that people will use who are non-church in our culture will use words not like, oh, Christians, well, they're loving, they're humble, they don't say that. They use words like bigoted, arrogant, judgmental, mean. Those words. Latest survey I looked at was of Generation Z. Generation Z are people who right now are aged 3 to 23. I don't know what comes after Generation Z. When you go all the way to Z, that's going to be a problem later. But anyway, so 3 to 23. Okay, so our kids all the way up to college students right now, that's the generation. 25% of the U.S. in that generation. 62% of Generation Z strongly agreed with this statement. Churches do nothing good for society and, in fact, are part of the problem. Okay? Take that in. 25% of our country, the next generation of our country, 62%, the church does nothing good for society and is, in fact, part of the problem. That's a problem. That's a branding problem. Because the reality is, if you take church out of the world, most humanitarian efforts go away. The vast majority around the world go away. That's reality, but that's not perception. And there's been a lot of church and a lot of Christians that have reinforced that perception, and that's the bad news. Here's the good news. When people have low expectations, they're easy to beat, right? That's the key to success. Have low expectations. You'll win every time, right? And people don't expect good from us, which means we have the element of surprise. And what Jesus said is that's to the first group of Christians in a skeptical world, be like, you know what? A surprise attack of love. That's what you're going to do. That's how people will know you're my disciples. That's how you will know this is legit. You're going to love people like I do, and they won't see it coming, and they won't know what to do with it. And there'll be a lot of people saying, why are you doing this? Who does this? And we can say, as we do acts of unexpected love, we can say, well, you know what? I can't help it. This is what Jesus did for me. And his love is in my heart. It just kind of overflows. I can't help but do what he did for me. I mean, if you understood what he did for me, I mean, I was messed up, and he loved me anyway. And, how can I not do this? And we get to tell our story. So in this series, and Love Does the Unexpected, we're asking everybody to act surprisingly, give generously, and share broadly. I'll get more details of that at the end, but let's just focus on the act surprisingly for a minute. At Easter, we got these little cool wristbands. I don't know if we have extras or not. If there are, we need to give them away. But what? Yeah, we have some. You have some. So if you didn't get one in your lobby, get one today. Just as a reminder, everywhere we go, to say, how can I love in an unexpected way? And we'll get more practical with this toward the end. But in my neighborhood, in my school, in my work, whatever, how can I love? And then as a church, you'll have opportunities, and many of you have already done them, as you've heard already in this service, to jump in with your group, or if you don't have a group, go online and say, hey, how can we love in unexpected ways as a group? But again, we just want to change the perception of Christianity in our community. We want to rebrand Jesus because the church hasn't done such a good job of keeping the Jesus brand. We want to do better for this next generation. That's all. In addition to unexpected source of love, in the story, an unexpected recipient. One of the cool things about the story is that the guy who is served, the guy who's laying on the ground, assumed to be dead, he was half dead but looks dead, and people, he's just barely hanging on to life kind of thing, is he's naked. And you think, that's weird. Why would you think that's a cool part of the story? And when you think naked, don't think naked, okay? So his outer clothes are stripped off. He's like in his underwear, so to speak. It would have been this tunic kind of a thing that they wore. But here's the great part of the story, is that when somebody is in their underwear, we're basically all the same. I mean, I know we don't all look the same, but you can't tell who's who when you're stripped down. You can't tell rich versus poor, powerful versus not powerful, religious versus irreligious, good person versus scoundrel of a person. You can't tell any of that. It's just a naked person on the side of the road. Now, for the religious people, I think that was a problem because they didn't know how to categorize them. I think the reason in the story why the priest and Levite walk by is they don't know who this guy is. Is he the kind of person you help or not? What if he's unclean? And if I help him, I'll be unclean. That's the way they thought. Jesus didn't think that way, but that's the way they thought. If I help this unclean person, because they had different categories for people. You had clean and unclean. You had righteous and sinners. You had touchables and untouchables, and we don't know who this person is. Now, that's what all religious people do that, and all of us have that in us, okay, that we have to fight. The Good Samaritan is good because he doesn't do that. He sees one category and he gets it. There's only one category of person, and it's a human being made in the image of God that he loves. That's the only kind of person there is. We're all the same. We're all sinful, broken people that Jesus loves and wants to redeem. That's all we are. Everybody. We're all in the same boat. And he sees it and he does that. That's the way Jesus loved. And what Jesus is saying, that's the way I want you to love. I don't want you to categorize who you love and who you don't love. I don't want you to make it complicated. You love everybody always. And for Jesus, that created a lot of misunderstanding and a lot of tension because he loved all the wrong people. The religious people hated it. They were like, how can you be a friend of sinners and tax collectors? They called him a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. He was not a glutton and a drunkard, but they assumed he was because he was going to parties where people were eating too much and drinking too much and hanging out with people and not preaching sermons. He was demonstrating love and acceptance. And they were like, how could he do that to these sinful people? Jesus, and it's not that Jesus threw truth away. John says Jesus came full of grace and full of truth. But the order is important. He always led with grace. He always led with acceptance. He always led with love, which opened people to relationship with him, which over time opened people up to the truth of what it means to follow him and live his better way. But he didn't start with truth. You agree with me or not? Because if you don't, you're out. He didn't do that. He just loved, which made people open to Jesus and then led people toward truth in Jesus' better way. And what Jesus is asking is, can we just love like he did? But that's going to bring some tension. Because for all of us, be like, well, I don't know, this group, it's category one. So in this series, in this season, we're intentionally choosing some unexpected partnerships. We'll continue our expected partnerships, ones that have become expected, because they're important. But we're doing some unexpected ones too. And we're raising money in this fund. We'll raise money for it next week just to pour out unexpected love. One of those groups is the AIDS Services of Dallas. Because Christians just aren't involved in dealing with AIDS in our community. And I've already gotten some feedback from some people who are like, well, these people deserve it. They shouldn't have got AIDS. They messed around, and, how can we? Do I deserve love? I don't. While we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. And just because you have AIDS doesn't mean you got it that way anyway. But, okay, let's say you did. It doesn't matter. We're all the same. People who need to be like, it's weird too, because in the evangelical church, we're doing a great job. Like evangelical Christians have been on the lead over the last 10 years in coming around AIDS in Africa. And which is awesome. And somehow that's okay. But AIDS in our backyard, it's like, well, no. Isn't that weird? So I talked at Easter, and some people didn't like it, about how we get to serve with the LGBT community, gay people, in this process because that's who's serving. Like, well, how can we team up with LGBT and how can we team up with you? I would love to be teaming up with Christians to help people with AIDS. They're just not doing it. There's nobody to team up with. We're the only ones, which is tragic. And it's a bonus that we get to team up with gay people in our community who also happen to think we hate them, and we don't. We love them because we're all in a category of one, right? And you think, well, what about what we believe about marriage and sexuality and all that? That's true. Hey, that's all good, but we lead with love. We lead with grace. It's about Jesus. It's not about trying to change people's behavior. Does that make sense? And so we get the opportunity to love. I was at an event a couple weeks ago for that, and it was a great event, and mostly, I was in the minority as a straight person, and so was John and Jenny Stanley, who were on our team, and people were so welcoming. But as we interacted with people, like one guy who's on the board who didn't know us yet, because they're kind of looking at us like, hey, are you going to hurt our people? Christians, are you going to be mean? Why do they even have to think that? I get why they have to think that, but we need to change that. So we're talking, like this one guy grew up in East Texas, and I said, so he's a gay guy. And I said, boy, it must have been interesting growing up. He said, oh, yeah, you bet. And I said, well, how did your family handle it? Because they're in a very conservative church, and we are too. We're a conservative church theologically, just liberal in love. And he said, man, it was really hard. Like I went through 5 years of reparative therapy to try to fix me, and that didn't work because it hardly ever does. And then there was nowhere for me to go in church. The only thing for me to do was to just leave church, leave Jesus. And Jenny did a great job before we left of going around and finding him, and just saying, hey, I hope you know that Chase Oaks is a place where you can come and get that. It doesn't matter. We come as we are. And yeah, we're going to affirm what Jesus affirmed, but we're going to love like Jesus loved. And, you're welcome here. You know that, right? And he said, yeah, I've already written it down, and let me make sure where it is. And I want to come and I want to show up because he said, my faith really is important to me. I just had to abandon it. She's like, you don't have to abandon it. You can rediscover it. That's the kind of church I think Jesus wants us to be, And doesn't mean we jettison what we believe about sexuality, marriage, and all that. Okay? I hope we're okay here. Another thing we get to do is we're coming around this bail thing and paying people's bail. And I know at first glance, they're like, what? Why do we do that? That doesn't make sense. Well, here's how that happened. So we have an organization that we started called Pivot at our church. We have several staff that we fund that help. It's a poverty alleviation thing to help people who have a hard time being employed, become employable, and then to get them jobs and out of poverty. Okay, that's what Pivot does. One of those groups are people who are felony offenders, first-time felony offenders. It's a diversion program and this was, God bless him, the DA of Collin County went to lunch with him and said, hey, what keeps you up at night? How could we as a church be helpful? And he said, man, one thing that really keeps me up at night is these first-time felony offenders for nonviolent felonies. And I know that if they get convicted and they're in environments where they're just going to keep spiraling in crime, and it would be really great to have a second chance program where they could be paired with mentors who would give them a different perspective about life and get them into a job and a certain, they'd have to, do about 9 months of stuff. And he had this whole idea, like, I'd really want to do that, but we can only do part of that. And I said, well, we can do the rest of that, right? Yeah, we could. And so that's why we started Pivot. That's really what launched it. So it's for first-time felony offenders, it's expunged. Like if they go through the program, they're never charged with a crime and they have a second chance, and it's a cool thing. But as we looked over, we've been doing this for a year, when we've looked at who's gone through that program, almost all of them are white. So we interacted with a DA, said, hey, what's the deal? Why are they all, white? Most of them. And he said, well, that is troubling, so let's look. So when we dug into it, the reason is bail. It's a socioeconomic reason, and there's still in our culture a lot of parity between race and socioeconomics. I know there's a lot of disparity too with that, okay? But if you're, I need to shorten it. So anyway, you realize, hey, wait a minute, that to be in this program, you have to be able to post bail because the DA can't even talk to them until after they post bail. And if you can't afford to post bail, then you can't be in the program. If you can't afford a bail bond, if you can't afford the bail, then, you thought, well, that's messed up. Like, we don't want it to be based on socioeconomic. These are actually the people we want to really help. And so how do we change that? So we had that, well, why don't we just pay people's bail? What if we did that? And then they could be in the program and they could, and we thought, well, that's probably complicated. Is there anybody else who's already done this before? And we found an organization that was interested in moving to Dallas called the Bail Project, who's been doing this for a long time and have paid for thousands of people's bail. And the more we got into it, we're like, wow, there's no way it works this way. There's no way like that. It's just this two-class system of, it's very different if you're poor versus wealthy if you get charged with a crime. Because if you're wealthy, you can get out on bail. And it's a huge difference. I mean, here's just a few stats. You're 4 times more likely to get a jail sentence if you stay in jail for the same crime, if you stay in jail versus if you get out on bail. 4 times more likely to get a jail sentence. And your sentence, if you get sentenced, will be 3 times longer. Here's the other thing. If you're too poor to, do that, then your life, it's going to be disrupted way more than, so let's say you're a single mom. It may be a fairly insignificant crime. It may be, and yet you're going to be in jail if you can't afford bail. $1,000 bail might as well be $10 million if you don't have the money. So for that amount, it's not that kind of a bail is not going to be a very huge crime, but you're going to be in jail until however many weeks or months it takes for your, to show up for your sentence, which means, let's say you're a single mom, you're going to lose your house, you're going to lose your job. If you have kids, you're going to lose custody of your kids. It's all going downhill in your life. You haven't been convicted of anything yet. You're presumed innocent until guilty, but that's where you're at. And it may not even be for a crime that you'll be jailed for, but you are jailed until you get, and you can see why it's so different, right? And so the Bail Project says, man, we want to intervene right away so that those things don't happen, and then provide some wraparound support to give different perspective, because we happen to believe that if people are given a shot and given perspective, that it'll probably turn out better than if they're just left in jail because they can't afford bail. Well, that kind of makes sense. So when the Bail Project that we're helping come to Dallas, here, think 50-50. So 50% of the people that by the way, 96% of the people that they work with show up at their trial, show up for court, which means you get the money back, and it can be used on and on and on. So it's not like they're getting off their crime. If they have to show up and they have to, right? But 50% of the people that they have gone through, these thousands of people, 50%, the case is dismissed. So they would have been in jail all that time, right? But instead, their case is dismissed. For the other 50%, 25% of those are found to be innocent. The other 25% are convicted as guilty, but only 2% do jail time for their crime. Think about that. Think about how different the two roads are. We want to provide a road for everybody, right? Just not based on socioeconomics. So I guess that can be controversial for people, but that's the deal. And it's bails like $5,000 and under. So we're not talking about, capital murder and all this kind of stuff. We're talking about pretty, again, that level of offense that the Bail Project focuses on. So we'll have the opportunity, and there'll be a lot of people said, they're paying my what? Who? Because for a lot of people, nobody's ever really cared about them. Be like, yeah, of course we love you. Of course we care about you. So unexpected recipient. Next week, we'll talk about immigrants and that side of things. We're just going to get all kinds of controversy going. But it's just loving people, right? That really is what it's about. And I don't think we're loving the way Jesus loved until we get a little uncomfortable, because we're not Jesus. And I don't think we're loving like Jesus loved until some religious people get upset about it, because that's what happened with Jesus. I hope they don't kill us like they did him, but still, so unexpected recipient. And then unexpected scope. What the Good Samaritan did, he's so over the top. In Galatians 6:10, Paul says, hey, let me make it easy for you, do good to all men. Which I love what Bob Goff says in his books. He said, always assume you have permission to do good to anybody. Because the Bible says, do good to who? Everybody. It's pretty simple. Not easy, but it's simple. Oh, come on, dude. Let me talk about unexpected scope a little bit, because that's the other part of this story, is what the Good Samaritan does. I mean, what he does, he gets him on, he bandages his wounds, he gets him on his donkey, takes him to the inn, stays with him that night to care for him. The next day, he's got to go, so he tells the innkeeper, gives him enough money to care for 24 days of food and care. He said, I want you to care for him. And then he leaves a blank check. He says, look, I'm coming back through. I don't care what it takes to care for this guy. You do whatever it takes, and I'll pay for it. That's like, so part of the unexpected is let's take what we already do to an unexpected scope. So one of the things we're raising money for, and we'll do a donation, you can give any time online, but donation next week, is to fill up our area food banks. And the reason we're doing money donations rather than food is they can buy food 10 cents on the dollar. So if we bring one can instead of money, that's really like, they can do 10 cans for the amount we'd pay one can for, okay? So, and they know what they need and all that kind of thing. We want to fill up the food. We want to take it to an unexpected scope of saying, whoa, we didn't see that coming. What are we going to do with all this? Right? That's unexpected scope. And in all of our projects, as you're doing things that we normally do, like our life group does beautification projects every year, really a couple times a year for a school that we partnered with, and we do some Christmas things and all that. So we're going to continue to do that as a group. But now we get to brainstorm, how can we take that to an unexpected scope? People already know we do that. So now let's just take it unexpected. And even in unexpected scope, it's like, who does that? Why would you do this? Again, well, how could I not? When you understand what Jesus did for me, he gave everything for me. He's changing my life. How can I not extend that love to other people like he asked me to? I can't help that. I mean, and we get to talk about Jesus. But it's when people ask because of unexpected love. And that's what Jesus invites us into. I mean, it's really cool what we get to do. It's not always easy, but it is simple. It's not complicated. You love everybody always. That's what the Good Samaritan did. And you do it to take it to an unexpected scope. It could be unexpected recipients, people who don't expect love from us. They should, but they don't. And so we get to change the narrative. We get to change that. And which means we're the unexpected source. So I want to make this really practical too, because we've talked about so many things. So when you came in, you got this thing that says 20 ways love does the unexpected. Go ahead and pull that out. And by the way, on the Bail Project, I know that there's still questions, and I get it. And you go on our website, there's more information there. And also go to, when you go on the web, there's a link to a TED Talk that is really helpful. And just watch, it's about a 15-minute TED Talk. And if you have questions, I think it'll answer a lot of those questions. So as we are in this series, we're act surprisingly, give generously, share broadly. So we're asking everybody to, on your own, act surprisingly, as well as our projects, to give generously. Next week, we'll do a donation. We're doing a donation to 3 things, all right? So it's, number one is, they're all the same, but the AIDS Services of Dallas, this fund that we're giving to outside our normal budget, that we're going to give gifts to these partners, AIDS Services of Dallas. The second thing is the Bail Project, paying people's bail. That's a revolving fund because 96% of the people come back, so it gets used and used and used. And then third is filling up our area food banks. Okay, so those are the 3 things we'll be giving money for in the Unexpected Fund. And we'll do that in the services next week, but you can go online and give anytime. You can, or go on PushPay. There's a PushPay app, and somebody will share that with you sometime because I'll just mess you up. And then share broadly. Share about what you're doing. Not to say, oh, look, man, we're so awesome. It's just we're trying to create a movement. We're trying to encourage each other with ideas. I've heard so many cool ideas that have encouraged me. And so share it on hashtag Love Does the Unexpected on whatever social media you like to use. Now, with the 20 ways that love does the unexpected, I want you to look through that list right now, okay? Because we talked about so many things that can be overwhelming. I want to make it simple. Doesn't mean it's easy, but simple. So look at this list of these 20 things. If God prompts you to do, put a number 21 and circle it. If there's something else God's put on your heart to do, that's awesome. But look through the list right now. There's a pen somewhere around you. If somebody has one, just take it. Because they're supposed to do unexpected things anyway. They should just give it to you. But circle one. That over the next couple weeks, you say, you know what, I could do that. And I'm asking you to actually do this. So look at it, you know. Circle one. And I'll give you a little bit of time to do that. In fact, give us some circle up music. There you go. That's nice. That helps, right? And then once you circle it, take a picture of it because you're not going to keep this sheet. In fact, what you're going to do is you're going to make a paper airplane. And if you forgot how to make a paper airplane, on the back are instructions and folds about how to turn it into an airplane. That's why these all are here from Friday night. So go ahead, once you circle your thing, take a picture of it so you remember, oh yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And you can do a write-in as well. Go ahead and start making your airplane because in a little bit, your campus host is going to tell you what to do with it. So after I pray, don't try to beat the Baptist Salubies just yet and leave. Just hang with us a little bit more as we do something with this. It's going to be fun. But let me pray for us because the end of this, the whole thing with the Good Samaritan, he ends it with the story, now go and do likewise, meaning he just invites us to live like Jesus, like the Samaritan who loves everybody always in ways that are surprising and unexpected. That's the deal. And in Christianity, the essence of real spirituality in this story is not what we know. That guy knew it all. It's what we do. And love isn't about what we know. Love is about what we do. And so let's love like Jesus. And it's going to stretch us. And it's going to make the religious person in us a little uncomfortable. And it's maybe going to be controversial. I don't know. Who knows? But let's just love in unexpected ways. Let's try to love like Jesus. And let's pray, and then we'll figure out what to do with these papers. Father, thank you that we get to be part of what you're doing in the world. And I thank you that it's pretty simple. The rule is just love everybody always. That we don't have to make it complicated. Should I love this person or not? Or is this person worthy or not? Or because we're all the same. We're all just messed up people who don't deserve anything, but who are deeply loved by you, by your grace, and you've got a whole plan for every single person on this planet. And so, Father, would you help us love people the way you love people and be your hands and feet, and just in little ways, medium ways, big ways, to love, to do the unexpected. And even these things that we've written down, Father, give us creativity, help us, and help us actually do it, and pray that people will receive it for what it is. It's just love. And Father, thank you that we get to be part of something like this. In Jesus' name, amen.